All right, so I think I'm live. So I was jamming a little Lionel Richie and about to do a couple stretches before I get out of here. And I thought, why not? I'll go live because I talk to a lot of clients about this. I just posted 2 other videos about hip stretches, knee stretches, a couple different things. I thought, I'm going to go through what is called the world's greatest stretch. There's actually a stretch, we call it the world's greatest stretch. I'll demonstrate very quickly. You've done a version of this before. It's similar to like a sun salutation, a runner's pose, but it has a rotational component. So a lot of versions of this, but this is a stretch you should be doing, but we'll talk a little bit about. So, and I'm wired up a little bit. So I'll have people do a toe touch, and then from this toe touch, bring 1 foot back. Let's see if I can get there. Hold that, and if they're okay doing this, you can reach forward with this hand, getting as long as I can from my back heel to my front fingertips. Reach high. Now I can do a twist like this, something like that, right? And then one modification, one thing you will see, or addition to it, that makes it a little more dynamic, is to bring my hips up and back, which stretches this back hamstring. Be careful with that one. Come back down. And then we might go back to a plank, take a breath here, maybe knock out a push-up, and then you either walk your feet into your hands or walk your hands back to your feet. All right, now, why is it the world's greatest stretch? If I'm just going to go for a walk, some of the mechanics involved is the position I'm in here now. Every time your right foot is forward, your left arm should be forward, right? Kind of a normal pace, right? As you're walking along, right foot swings forward, I counterbalance my right leg with my left arm, right? And then I'm walking here, walking there, right? So, and I'm running, it's that much more exaggerated, right? I'm driving into this position here. So not only is my right knee and right foot forward, my right hip flexor is flexed forward, but not only is my shoulder flexed a little bit, my elbow flexed a little bit, so it's all flexed in this sagittal plane, this forward and backwards plane. I also have a rotational component, right? It can look subtle sometimes, and we don't want to get too loosey-goosey. That's one of the reasons we do core strength and anti-rotational strength and things like that for core training. But I'm going to train sort of like this. So my right foot's forward, I'm here, right? So it's flexion, extension of my hips and shoulders, but also rotation of my spine. Mostly my upper back, spine, my thoracic spine. I'm going to switch a little setting here, just in case anyone's around commenting. I can see that. All right, so if that's the mechanics I want, again, just a normal walk, or I'm sprinting, all right, I want that mobility. If I'm sitting all day long, all right, I'm sitting in a desk chair all day long and my spine is flexed forward, especially my thoracic spine, it's not going to rotate quite as well, right? And so I'm going to be running and my hips might feel pretty good, but if my thoracic spine is not rotating very well, that's problematic. So I want to warm that up before I exercise, before I play ball, before I go for a jog. All right. In the same way, I talked to, my niece Katie the other day. We're talking about running and running with the dog. She has a band that goes around her waist, a leash that goes to Willis, and they can go for a run together. But that frees up her arms to walk and run like this. If you're going for a walk or run and you're holding your leash out and everything else is moving, that throws off your mechanics. No big deal for a run or two, but if that's your 5 or 10 year routine, that can begin to cause problems because you're taking away that kind of natural mechanic. All right. So that's such a fundamental movement pattern, right, that I'm doing while I'm walking and running and doing anything mobility-wise, that we need to do a stretch to hit all of those things at once, hence the world's greatest stretch. All right? So, but I kind of modify it some, because what you want to do, like any stretch or strength or exercise that we do, it's always an assessment first. Before you do a push-up workout, just do 1 push-up. How does your neck feel? How do your shoulders feel? Right? How do your elbows feel? Check in with yourself, and then go ahead and do your workout, like quality of movement before quantity of movement. And this is no different. And so I like to start from this standing position, if someone can, and just knock out a few toe touches, whatever that looks like. After one of my toe touches, then I'll bring a foot back. But immediately you will know if your hip's up a little high, if you have strain in your back or your hip flexor, because remember that your hip flexor muscle that's here goes through your pelvis and attaches to your lower back. So if I just get into this position alone, this might be enough to stretch my hip and my quad out, to take it that much further and not only stretch that muscle, but to support my body with that. That's a lot of stretch and strain you want to listen to. So if you're taking a class or a stretch class, or whatever you might be doing, and you feel this, come out of that stretch. So the modification then, as far as being there with your lower body first, just drop that knee to the floor. All right. Now you can still get the same hip flexor stretch we're looking for. And not only this stretch with this leg going back, but this stretch coming forward, right? You can also then get the rotational component without the stress on your knees and lower back. So you can kind of ease into a stretch. So I might have, because what happens is if we are stretched out there or supporting ourselves, almost like a plank in this position here, you're focusing so much on the stability of this plank and stable position that you have a hard time rotating, right? So I'd rather you come down on your knee, relax your hips a little bit, stay engaged. You can contract this glute, tuck your tail a little bit, and then go into a few rotations. And this is where you can drop this elbow to the floor, right? Sit in that if you want to get a little bit of that action. Wake up that hip a little bit. And then go into that rotation there, all right? So hit that a few times, and then switch legs. And then to switch legs even, this is another assessment. If I have someone who can't just do this, I mean, that's an exercise in and of itself. We call it a Spider-Man walk or something. That in and of itself is tough, right? So I'm going to see if we could do that, all right? So go here, and then the same way. I'm going to drop this. Now, because of my hips, my left hip joint's tighter. I don't drop quite as well there, but just kind of feel that out. Is that your lower back? Is that your groin? Is that your hip? What are you feeling there? And then stay tall and reach to the ceiling here, all right? And again, you just bring your elbow down in the general vicinity of the floor. Picture it hitting the floor. Don't crank it down and ruin your spine and posture trying to get your elbow to the floor. If you're doing a stretch class, just because your best friend or spouse or whoever can do that stretch next to you, never mind that. Stay within your own body. Be mindful of your limitations and your restrictions and what's going on. Because I've seen a lot of people and clients tell me, well, I went to a stretch class and they're compensating in order to keep up in class. All right. So that's the rotational component. So again, you're getting this hip flexion and extension stretch, but then you're also getting the rotation, which is what we want there. All right. So that's number one modification. Another thing that I like to do, I'm not sure which foot is best, is when I get into this position here, again, I'm supporting myself with my groin, with my hips, my hip flexors, my hamstrings, my quads, everything. I like to get this rotation here with my back foot. So if you're feeling good with that just normal, what we call runner's pose, you can get that rotation first, just to see how your hip joint feels. I'll get that, and then I'll reach forward, reach high, and then drop my knee down there, all right? So that's another rotation to get. The world's greatest stretch, then also you'll see modifications with that hamstring, let's switch sides, and you want to be careful with this one too. If your hamstring, if you have a pulled hamstring, you want to be careful stretching this. I've pulled my right hamstring. This used to kind of sting when I did this stretch. Your hamstring connects below your knee and then into your hip joint, right? So if you stretch it, you can stretch your hamstring by just straightening your knee or kind of bending and doing a toe touch, bending at the hips, right? Flexing at the hips. To hit both of that, what you can do is, in the world's greatest stretch, after getting this stretch here, whether you're doing reaches and twists and all that good stuff, right? What you can do then is pull up and back and get that stretch where you're hitting a little bit of your calf and that hamstring, all right? And then back down there. You can come up onto that heel and get that stretch and come back down. So you can play with that a little bit, but just like the other modification, you're supporting yourself with a lot of muscle already, so be careful. Because you're supporting yourself in like this plank type position, if you're halfway through a workout, you've already done some planks, your core is fatigued, you don't want to be cranking into a pretty strong eccentric or negative stretch on that hamstring, because that's an easy way to tweak that, right? The next day, I think, I did the stretch class, but just pushed it a little too much, or at the end of a workout, something like that. So same modification, come down to your knees. So now my knee is on the floor. I'm able to relax these muscles. They're not acting as like supporting muscles quite as much. And I can still pull back and get that stretch. I'm straightening my knee and getting that stretch in my hamstring. So I can just kind of work through that a little bit. All right. And then pay attention to, as you go back, what does that hamstring feel like? Don't pull too far into that. Two things you're being aware of. One is your spine. If you come back and immediately pulls you into this like spinal flexion, this thoracic flexion here, that's probably a sign of these muscles always pulling on your back in posture, right? You can do a calf stretch. with bad posture and not feel it as much. You can do that same calf stretch. I just posted a video on this where you stand nice and tall, and you're going to get a much better stretch on your calf just by standing up tall through your spine. So same way here, I'm going to get in this position here, then flatten my back and pull my hip straight back like someone's pulling straight back on my tailbone until I get that stretch there. All right. So maybe from this position, stretch back and get that stretch there. All right. Then if I want to go back, and I can explore that a little bit. The other thing, other than my spine I'm looking at is my foot. I want to be aware, does this pull me onto the side of my foot? If your hamstring is so tight, that can lead into gastroc tightness, fibularis tightness, the muscles kind of in your lower leg muscles. So as you pull back, sometimes I see this where an arch comes up and you go to the outside of your foot. All right, which then there's a good sign that you might be, I guess, underpronating, or you might just have some tension in your ankles that you're landing on the outside of your foot, or maybe you're not pronating to your big toe when you're running, depending on how you're landing when you're walking and running. So if this pulls you onto the outside of your foot, you want to be aware of that as well. Don't pull your hamstring so much that you lose your ankle, your neutral ankle, right? So pull back and get that stretch, but if you feel like your foot is being thrown off too much, don't go too far beyond that, all right? Because you're just going to tell your nervous system that's what happens when you stretch your hamstring. So every time you stretch that out, your foot's going to roll, right? Then you hit a gumball or a curb or something like that, and that's a sprained ankle. Because you have weak ankles now, it could be just because this whole lateral line, your hamstrings, your abductors, something is tight along the way. So just be mindful of what's going on in the rest of your body when you're doing these stretches, all right? So 2 modifications then for this hip flexor stretch and rotation, and then this hamstring stretch. So if you can hit it up here by all means, or build up to it. Start with this one here. How does this feel? We also, in this position here, if you just get in this position, be aware that you're not just kind of dropping down loosey-goosey here. All right, so in this position rather, I don't want to just drop and just kind of hang on my lower back or my hip flexors there. I want to be engaged with this tall, strong spine, with my glute contracted, right? And then I can reach to the ceiling and get that, all right? So there you go. A couple modifications for the world's greatest stretch. Start in this position. You can either just start here. I mean, for me to be in this position here, for my Catholic Fit audience watching my Catholic Fit page, this is the bottom of your genuflect. If you have a hard time doing a genuflect, if you come down, if my left knee bothers me at the bottom of this genuflect, it's probably because my hips are tight, my quadriceps are tight, and I get some, maybe some degeneration, arthritis, scar tissue, something going on my knee joint that's not very happy. This is a pretty good stretch to work that as well. But what you want to do is put a pillow on the ground. I'm on a padded turf floor, but put a pillow down, a couch cushion, and just hang out in this position here. If I line up with the camera, I want to be sort of kind of a hip width stance. I can get more in line, which is going to challenge my balance more. But just see, what does this bottom of a lunge, bottom of a genuflect position feel like? Does it throw off my posture? Can I stay tall, tuck my tail? Do I get a stretch here, right? So this is the most basic version, is just to go down in this position here. I take that back. Getting on the floor is pretty tough. That's advanced in and of itself for a lot of people. So standing with your foot up on a step. So if I were to stand here and bring my foot up on a step, that would be the most basic version of this stretch. And then the rotation component would just be to rotate there, all right? So in a high kneeling position, or we call this half kneeling because one knee's down, one knee's up. So bottom of a genuflect, I'm gonna go here and I can just work on this rotation. I can work on my balance, get a little rotation there. I can reach high, I can tuck my tail, right? And I can get this hip flexor stretch, this quadricep stretch, take some tension off my knee. Don't hang out here for too long because that will create a different kind of compressive tension on your knee. But that's a good position to start. And then can I raise up from this? And a genuflect, I'd raise up using my right leg. Ideally, we'd exhibit strength in both legs at the same time, and we're able to just raise straight up using both legs and back down. Again, so most advanced version, world's greatest stretch. You're gonna be here. You can reach, twist, reach underneath, get your hamstring, and then switch legs or stand up. Modified number 1 is my knee is down on the floor. I can reach here, reach through, get that hamstring stretch. Modified number 3, take it back a notch, just peeling back the layers of the onion. I'm gonna be here, same thing. Be tall, just feel this stretch, rotate over my shoulder, rotate over my hip. All right, if I want to hold on to something, I can bring my leg back and I can just get a light hamstring stretch there. All right, all working the same thing. And then number 4, I guess, would be the most basic is standing, is I'm going to stand here, grab a kettlebell, and I'm just going to put my foot up on a bench, right? I can stand here, I can rotate or twist over this knee, I can step back and get a stretch there, knock that out. All right? Oh, hi, Mom. My mother-in-law's watching, so I'm giving a shout out. So, hi, Mom. All right, so that's the stretch I do. If you work with me in my studio, I'm running through some version of this stretch with everyone. If I go to play basketball, that's one stretch I do every time. All right, I just want to get on the floor. Before I go to jump, right, and drive up and do a layup there, that has to be stretched out. Right? I want to stretch this muscle out. I want to stretch that muscle out. And then I want to be able to reach high and do my layup, right? So I just turned this into, this is essentially my layup position. I just jumped off my left foot, my right hand is doing a layup, right? And we can put that into any sport. You know, we talk about basketball mostly in here. So, all right, there's your world's greatest stretch. Try that out. Comment below. Love you, Mom. Thanks for checking in. And I'll see you next time.